Hey, it's Andrew and Nate here from GuitarLessons.com, and in this gear feature we're going to be looking at the TC Electronics Hall of Fame Reverb. We're going to go over a couple of the main features and just some of the things that we liked about it and a few of our favorite settings.
All right, for this gear feature, I am going to be going digital out of a Line 6 Helix using a deluxe reverb model. Everything's dry, except I have the Hall of Fame going through an effects loop. So just like if you had an effects loop on your amp, I'm using it that way. And we figured it'd be a good contrast to have a digital rig and then an analog rig. So
right.
Andrew, actually before that, I'm using a Les Paul Lite, which is kind of like in between a Les Paul Standard and an SG, so as far as the tone on the guitar. And you can tell them what you're running to, man.
Yep, so I'll be playing this Fano SP6. From there, I'm just running into my pedals, just all in front of the amp. I will be using a Wampler Ego compressor and an Analog Man King of Tone, and then into the Hall of Fame reverb. From there, it's going into my Dr. Z Easy G50, and it's mic'd with a Shure SM57. So the TC Electronic Hall of Fame reverb has 4 knobs, and they're pretty straightforward and easy to use. The first knob is decay, which controls the length of your reverb. The next knob is the effects level, which controls the amount of reverb. And then the next knob after that is the tone, and the tone just rolls off high or adds highs back to the signal. And then it has a switch that will select the type of reverb. So there's 10 different types of reverbs that you can use with this pedal. And then finally there's a toggle switch, which has long and short pre-delay, which if you have maybe a bigger sounding reverb, it sounds a lot better to have a longer pre-delay because it separates your guitar tone from it. Where if you're going to do something more subtle like a spring reverb, then you'd want a shorter pre-delay.
Cool.
So with that, let's maybe take a look at what our dry signals sound like, and then we're going to go through a couple of tones that we like that we can get with this pedal.
Cool. I'm just going to play A chord. Cool. Go ahead, Andrew. Start. Let's know which ones you like the best.
The setting that I really like to use, the first setting that I like to use, is kind of like an ambient hall reverb. I use it for kind of ambient chord patterns, stuff like that. Kind of can get almost a synthy thing to go in the background. It's really cool. So I have the mix and the decay up pretty high and the tone rolled back a little bit. And like I said, it's on the hall setting with a long pre-delay. So.
Typically, the only 2 types of reverb that I like are, like I said, spring, just because it's on an amp, and then I like plates too. So I have a plate setting here. Effects level is pretty high, just because I wanted to make it a little more extreme for you guys so you can actually hear what the pedal does. Decay is pretty high too. Long, pre-delay. Tone is pretty much in the middle, and that just depends on how sharp you want it. And then again, plate setting. So.
Nice.
And just to let you hear what it sounds like with some delay on it, because typically when I'm using this kind of reverb, I have some delay too for just a big ambient sound, right?
So the other setting that I like to use with this pedal is the spring reverb setting. So typically I'll use the spring reverb on my amp when I'm playing a show or something like that. But what I've found is on the noisier stages, when you jump around or somebody's walking by or the bass drum, stuff like that, it can make the reverb tank vibrate and it makes this really loud, terrible sound. It's horrible. So I find myself using a spring reverb pedal. This one does a really good job of it. So what I've done is I have the decay and the effects level down a little bit, the tone up, and then the pre-delay is set to short. So it sounds like a real amp, and it just kind of gives you a splashy spring sound. This is what it sounds like.
The next reverb that I picked normally would be spring reverb, but since Andrew already did that one, I wanted to kind of feature the mod one because it's kind of like you have two pedals in one with this. You don't have a lot of control over the modulation, or I guess it would be coarse. You'd know better than I would, Andrew.
It's basically coarse.
Okay, so yeah, it's kind of like a hall, I guess, with some coarse on it. So here's the dry signal again. And here it is. And when you hold chords out, you can hear the trail off with a little bit of mod in there.
So a few more features of this pedal. You have true bypass switching. It's selectable between buffered and true bypass, which is really nice because sometimes you want a true bypass pedal, but sometimes if you have a big pedal board and you're running long cables, you might want to buffer at the end of your signal chain, which this pedal works really well for. You can also select between trails and not having trails, also known as kill dry. Yeah. And what that does is it allows you to, when the pedal is working and you turn it off, it allows the trails to continue on of the reverb, or you can have it so that when you turn the pedal off, the trails stop as well. The pedal also does have stereo ins and outs, which is really helpful if you're going to run 2 amps or a stereo rig like the Helix or something else digital like that, or you're using stereo delays and things like that. To adjust the bypass stuff, you can go inside the pedal and there's dip switches inside and that allow you to adjust for that.
Right. So those are a lot of features and benefits in one pedal. But if you're like me, you're just going to want to keep it simple and have 1 or 2 settings that you like and just stay with that. If you're more like Andrew, you're going to dig into it and find a lot of cool things that this pedal can do. One time, I will say this is great for backup because one time I did have an amp and the reverb tank completely went out on it, and I wish I would have had a reverb pedal at the time, just in case something like that would have happened again. Now I do, which is great. And I would just use the spring on it because I really like the setting on here. You want to play a little more? Let them see what it sounds like?
Yeah.
Cool.
So as you can see, the Hall of Fame, it's pretty diverse. Allows you to get a bunch of different reverb tones and stuff like that. So it's pretty great for just about any guitar player, I'd say. It's also super affordable. It's about $149 US. But if that's a little out of your league, they do make a miniature version. I think it's called the Hall of Fame Mini. Yeah. And that one's only $99 US.
That's probably the one I would go for if I had it to do over again, just because I used like a one or two, you know.
There you go. So that's it for this GuitarLessons.com gear feature. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Nate.
We'll see you later.